Welcome back to Poorly Educated Today in the News, the only news show brave enough to read a 200-page geopolitical risk report and then explain it using tractor metaphors and gas station economics. Folks, the world this week looks less like a stable global order and more like somebody dropped a toolbox inside the washing machine of history and hit the spin cycle. We got wars, tariffs, government shutdown drama, oil markets doing gymnastics, and tech billionaires playing chess with supercomputers, while the rest of us just trying to afford eggs and gasoline. So let's dive in. Segment 1. The Strait of Hormuz just turned into the world's most expensive toll booth. So the big story right now is the war between the United States, Israel, and Iran, which has escalated faster than a bar fight after someone insults somebody's pickup truck. The operation has already dropped over 5,000 bombs on Iranian military sites, which is about the same amount of explosives my uncle claims he needed to remove a tree stump in 1998. But the real problem isn't just the bombs. It's that Iran decided if they're going down, they're going to take the world economy with them by basically turning the Strait of Hormuz into a maritime demolition derby. About 20% of the world's oil normally flows through that little stretch of water, and now ships are getting hit, insurance companies are canceling coverage, and global oil markets are acting like a cat thrown into a bathtub. A cargo ship got struck by projectiles this week, 3 crew members missing, and suddenly every shipping company in the world is rerouting around the entire Arabian Peninsula like a lost tourist avoiding a toll road. The International Energy Agency had to release 400 million barrels from emergency reserves just to keep gas prices from launching into orbit. And you know things are serious when government officials start talking about strategic petroleum reserves, because that's basically the global economy's version of digging into the emergency snack drawer. Segment 2. When gas prices and bond markets start fighting each other. Now the weird part is inflation numbers technically looked fine for February. The consumer price index came in around 2.4%, which normally would mean economists pop open a celebratory spreadsheet and declare victory. But that data came out before oil prices started doing CrossFit workouts thanks to the war. Brent crude briefly shot up near $120 a barrel, which means every gas pump in America is preparing to emotionally damage millions of commuters. And the bond market noticed immediately. The 10-year Treasury yield jumped above 4%, which sounds boring until you realize that's the financial equivalent of your mortgage suddenly deciding it wants to cosplay as a credit card interest rate. Investors are basically saying, yeah, we don't believe inflation is staying calm if half the world's oil routes look like a pirate movie. It's like trying to judge the calmness of a lake while somebody is actively throwing cinder blocks into it. Meanwhile, the VIX Fear Index jumped high enough to make Wall Street traders start stress-eating almonds and refreshing Bloomberg terminals every 7 seconds. Segment 3. Tariffs, trade wars, and the economic equivalent of a family Thanksgiving fight. While all this is happening, the United States decided it might be a good time to slap 15 to 20% tariffs on goods from the European Union. Because nothing stabilizes a fragile global economy quite like starting an argument with your biggest trading partner. Economists say tariffs are basically taxes on consumers, which means every imported product might soon cost more than a bass boat at a fishing tournament. Over 20 U.S. states already filed lawsuits saying the administration stretched a 1974 trade law like it was a bungee cord attached to economic policy. That law was originally meant for emergency balance of payment crises, back when disco was still on the radio and nobody owned a smartphone. Using it now to tariff the entire European Union is like using a butter knife to fix your truck engine. Technically, you can try, but it's gonna look weird and probably break something expensive. Meanwhile, China quietly lowered its economic growth target to around 5%, which might sound respectable until you realize that's the slowest pace they've admitted in 3 decades. When the world's manufacturing engine starts coughing like an old lawnmower, the rest of the global economy starts wondering if the next recession is warming up in the bullpen. Segment 4: Technology, AI chips, and the global supercomputer arms race. Over in the tech world, the United States decided advanced AI chips are now basically the new uranium. The government is drafting export rules that control how many high-powered GPUs can be shipped overseas. Small shipments are fine, but if a country wants to build a giant AI data center with hundreds of thousands of chips, they basically have to promise to invest in American technology infrastructure first. That's like owning the only tractor dealership in town and telling farmers they can buy engines only if they agree to build their barns in your backyard. The strategy is clear, though. Whoever controls the computing power controls the future economy, and Washington is trying to make sure the next generation of artificial intelligence is powered mostly by American hardware. Meanwhile, OpenAI is trying to raise $40 billion from Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds, which means the same oil money currently shaking the global economy might soon be paying for the robots that replace half our office jobs. Segment 5: Government shutdown hangover and political chaos. Back here at home, Congress is finally crawling toward ending the longest federal government shutdown in U.S. history. That shutdown shaved about a full percentage point off economic growth for the quarter, which is basically the financial equivalent of stalling your tractor halfway through planting season. Government agencies froze, services stalled, and suddenly lawmakers realized that turning off the federal government is a lot less fun once airports, research labs, and food inspections stop functioning. Now, the compromise bill is tied to a massive policy package called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which sounds less like legislation and more like a cruise ship-themed buffet. It includes new Medicaid requirements, changes to public health funding, and a bunch of fiscal reforms that states are now scrambling to understand. At the same time, the Senate is confirming a new leader for the National Security Agency, which is probably good timing considering Iran's cyber units are very likely sharpening their keyboards right now. Segment 6: The world is somehow still doing sports and science. And in the middle of all this chaos, humanity is still doing normal human things like sports and medical research. Scientists announced a breakthrough molecule called SU-212 that might treat one of the most aggressive forms of breast cancer. Early trials show tumors shrinking dramatically, which is one of those quiet scientific victories that reminds you not everything in the news cycle is a flaming dumpster rolling downhill. Meanwhile, the sports world keeps rolling along like it lives in a separate universe. The Phoenix Suns dropped 129 points in a game this week. The Washington Capitals scored 7 goals against Calgary, and the National Women's Soccer League is launching a big TV broadcast expansion, which honestly might be the healthiest sign of all, because if people are still arguing about hockey scores and basketball stats while the global economy shakes, it means civilization hasn't completely lost its mind yet. In conclusion, the past 5 days have looked less like a normal week of news and more like a geopolitical stress test for the entire planet. Wars are disrupting oil routes. Governments are fighting over trade policy. Technology is becoming the new battlefield, and markets are reacting like somebody spilled coffee on the global control panel. But somehow, humanity keeps pushing forward, building new medicines, playing sports, and arguing about politics like it's just another Wednesday. And honestly, that might be the most reassuring thing in this whole mess.